I'm sure sales and marketing directors out there that might watch this video will be nodding their heads because
I'd love to introduce you to our guest, Brad Breeding. Hello, Brad. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. My background is in financial planning. I actually spent 14 years as a financial planner prior to starting the company that I have now, which is mylifesite.net. I would get questions from time to time about the different types of retirement communities in our area. People who were looking for third-party guidance and really couldn't find anybody to help answer their questions in a way that was satisfactory. And so I just started to do a lot of research on senior living and in particular, continuing care retirement communities. That's kind of our niche here at My Life Site. So that's really where I focused my efforts because that's a little more of a complex decision for people, given the financial commitment and the different types of contracts. And so I started helping people kind of navigate that decision process and just really found that it was fulfilling because people were telling me, you know, we are so glad to find somebody that can finally help us figure some of this out. And so we went from doing this sort of one-on-one to putting this concept online, which is really what we're all about now, is kind of providing tools, information analysis to help people more effectively navigate that decision process in terms of understanding what to ask, what to look for, that kind of thing. You know, what I've found is that they'll really dig into it and then something will come up in life and they'll sort of put it aside for a while. And I'm sure sales and marketing directors out there that might watch this video will be nodding their heads because, you know, and then all of a sudden they'll get something, kind of a fire in their belly to dig back into it, you know, and that's kind of been what I've found to be the process.
Are you seeing any headwinds or tailwinds or any sort of trends in the marketplace today?
If we start with tailwinds, I think the most obvious and probably the biggest is just the explosive growth in the senior population because, I mean, even if the penetration rates remain flat, just by sheer growth, we're going to see, you know, industry growth. And if the industry can really innovate and manage to increase that penetration rate, then certainly we'll see even more growth beyond that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is how can we capitalize on this population growth that we have before us, and it's happening already. As far as headwinds, I think there's probably a number of things. I'd say the biggest is probably, from my perspective, having never spent a single day in senior living sales, kind of an outsider looking in, my biggest one, I think, is probably the perception that when people leave their homes, they're losing their independence. That is still a major perception in our society that I think is kind of being held over from several decades ago, where if you left your home, you're pretty much going to a nursing home. And so I think people still just have that ingrained in their minds. And so until the industry can really overcome that perception, I think that's going to continue to be a struggle. I think, you know, you hear about technology and how that's going to help people stay in their own homes and how that's going to be a threat. And I think that is true to some degree, although that same technology can very much be utilized and even optimized in a senior living provider or in a senior living community. So I think the bigger issue really for me is when I see, you know, the increase in older adults that are more comfortable using rideshare programs and eventually self-driving cars. I see that as being a bigger threat because one of the big tools that the senior living industry has, you know, in terms of helping people, sort of a reason for people to move their community, if you will, is because, you know, we have everything kind of here, socialization, you know, everything that goes along with it, right? All the amenities, activities, all those things. And so when the mobility piece is kind of removed because transportation's easier, I think that's going to be a challenge for senior living. So I think getting ahead of that curve now is vitally important for the industry. And I can't imagine why any senior living provider is not talking to rideshare programs right now and coming up with really creative ways to innovate around transportation within their communities. Think about things like, you know, a group activity bus, right? Well, you know, if you can find one single baby boomer out there, for instance, that sees one of those and says, I'm ready to go somewhere where I can ride on one of those, you know, I would be shocked. So those, how do you, for the times that we're in, attract that audience, and group activity buses don't do it. Those are great for assisted living,
Right.
but that's what people see. They see those as assisted living. So if I'm coming to visit a community and I'm seeing those sort of things, that's just furthering my perception that this is really a home for the aged type of situation.
Right. What do you feel like some of the biggest challenges are facing our sales and marketing leaders?
Breaking out of sort of the older school types of sales mentalities, right? Where it's, really come in, you're sit down in the office, get the marketing packet, go on a tour, all these kind of things.
Right.
I think in some cases, the industry as a whole, and again, I know some do better than others, but kind of breaking out of that, realizing it's more about connections, answering people's questions forthrightly, being totally transparent, recognizing that it's not all about the product. It's not all about the physical product.
Exactly.
It's more about how people are going to flourish and actually live day to day, whether they can continue to do the things that they want to do. I've heard people tell me that they didn't move to a community because they love to garden and they can't garden anymore. And you can't accommodate every single person's preferences, but, just recognizing what they want to do every day and how they live their lives, I think you've got to connect on that level. I think you've got to be a resource. You've got to be a resource for people these days. That people are looking, they don't want a sales counselor, they want a resource counselor.
Right.
Somebody that can help them make this decision. And, so all of those kind of things that I think are getting more traction in the industry, which is a good thing. But, just meeting people where they are in their journey, I think that's really where it starts. One of the challenges, I think, is that you have the next generation and the current generation. So your current residents might want something much different than what your future residents want. So reconciling those, I recognize, is often a challenge. To some degree, I think each provider needs to almost have a niche. What's recognizing that not everybody is going to be a good fit for your community. And I think they do that to some degree, but really recognizing what separates you from the other communities out there and focusing on that, because you can't be all things to all people.
Right. Here's how they typically respond to Google. Here's the whole pathway, or here's their whole resident journey.
When we talk about challenges, one of the things that I see, and this comes from my financial planning background, I hear it, particularly when we're talking about continuing care and life plan communities, financial soundness, sound financial management is of the utmost importance to people that are looking at making that decision. Whether they tell the sales team that or not, that is a big deal. How do I know my money is going to be safe? These types of questions. And to me, if a community really wants to increase sales, that in and of itself, I realize won't do it. But I feel sure that those who can look a prospect in the eye and say that financial management of this community is absolutely critical to our point. We make that one of our top priorities because we know how important our commitment is to you, and we know how important your money is to you. And not only say that, but then show them why, show them how, really let them know that is absolutely a top priority, because if people have any hesitation about that, they're not going to do it.
One of the really interesting things I heard just recently was one of the community members said, we really hate when life plan communities are marketed as a cruise ship. I don't want you guys to come here and just wait on me hand and foot and make all my food. I want to make my own food sometimes. How do you see kind of the website and interactive pieces and really resources, again, like yourself, playing into the overall resident journey and kind of that decision-making process?
I think it's absolutely important to have those tools available. Anything that's going to help engage somebody, not only engage them, but help them to learn something that's going to equip them to make this decision.
Yep.
Anytime there's confusion or uncertainty, it's going to delay the decision.
Key takeaways or kind of undertones that I'm really hearing is that as a senior, I have to trust the community. I have to trust that you're financially stable. I have to trust that you are going to be a resource, that you're going to help me get through this confusion. And then also, I have to trust that what you're saying is true. And when I get to the community, that I'm going to have these amenities, that I'm going to have a richer lifestyle than I currently today. How can we help educate this space a little bit better? Is it at the community level where we just have to educate, those in our, tight-knit circles, or is there a way to kind of broaden this out on a more national scale to try to educate the masses?
I would say both. I mean, I think when the industry starts to focus more on education, and less on, I shouldn't say less on sales. I mean, I recognize at the end of the day, you've got to have people moving into your community, but I think the education piece is going to help with that. So when we see more of that kind of uniformly across the industry, whether it's online, one-on-one, in events, and you start to see that on a more industry-wide basis, I think that's going to help. So it's got to be done in all of those areas, I think.
Right. It's interesting because when I hear trust and resources, a lot of times excessive promotion is the only tactic. It's all about us, where, this notion of meeting them where they're at and, being a resource and building trust and that continuity. And then at the point, get into promotion mode. But so often it looks like it's just promotion is the only tactic. And that's clearly this day and age we live in, that's clearly not going to work anymore.
It's almost like a real estate transaction. I mean, if you're thinking about buying a home, well, what's the first thing you do? You have a realtor go and show you the home. And I think a lot of times, you do see where some people in the sales and marketing industry for senior living maybe have a real estate background. And so you have some of that still kind of there, I think, where it's that same sort of approach, that come in, we're going to show you around this beautiful facility. And that's important, but, at what stage? Because it's so different from just buying a house. It's a financial decision, a healthcare decision, a housing decision, all wrapped up into one, and a lot more than that. So I think we've got to recognize that as an industry and realize that the product is a piece of the equation, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Brad, this has been amazing. Can you tell us more where to find you?
Probably easiest thing is just go to our website. So it's mylifesite.net, which is mylifesite.net. And our contact information, email, and everything will be on that website. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.